Heather is an expert in human design and Akashic Records and intuitive practices, and she blends ancient wisdom and practical tools to reconnect you back to your authentic self. I'm just excited to have you here again and have this recording. We have recorded a podcast for the show a few weeks ago, but the recording did not happen. It was just not supposed to be. So here we are for the second time. Is something in this
And this is
conversation.
the essence of perseverance. Like this is the essence of perseverance.
He literally is just like, we're committed to sharing this. It was just too much energy to share at the beginning. So I guess it had to just had to redial in. But I'd love to kind of start with human design and your experience with that and just what your profile is. And yeah, what's the energy type in your profile?
So, um, we'll start like so I was introduced to human design 2020, 2021-ish timeframe. I was in another business, like online business focused thing, and somebody happened to bring it up in conversation.
Yeah.
And so um I am a 5-1 manifesting generator. And
Okay.
so that line one took me down such a rabbit hole. So in the past 4 years, I have um, done a whole slew of different things as far as anything that I could get my hands on. Um, I I am that quintessential line one, and I have the book that was created with Raw. I've got pretty much every one of Karen Curry Parker's books, which is the Quantum Human Design. I
Okay.
have Gene Keys. I have the I Ching. I and then on top of that, like dove into like all of the astrology and deepening the level of understanding of astrology because there was always that kind of curiosity with astrology, but then like getting into the nuances of what that means within your chart
Yeah.
and not just like your birth chart, but the chart of your human design. I have found that while the profile is interesting, it to me it's really fascinating how the energy moves, right?
Mm.
And with what is activated, what centers are linked and unlinked, and how that really influences how we interact with the world around us. And to
Mm.
me, that is so much more fascinating than just what we can learn about ourselves
Mm.
because
Yeah.
it's one of those things where when you look at your chart, it's that like this explains why I am the way I am.
Yeah.
But when we get into where defined or where hanging gates are open and connect with the world, right? Like we really get to understand how our environment was able to impact us so easily or not, right? Like
Mm.
in the sense of if you've got, like in my case, I do have a defined G center. So for me, it wasn't so much this people's ability to influence who I thought I was, but it was I have like the open head, so like the ability of like
Mm.
who's what thought is actually mine, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, is that
So
me? Is that them? Is that another energy?
and so like the idea and so just recognizing like and learning that because I know I have an open head, like I have a completely open head, no defined channels in my head at all.
Yeah.
And recognizing that like I can not have the attachment to everything that I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So I don't get caught up in the pressure of the thoughts,
Right.
right? Whereas while I, and especially because I don't have anything attached to there, right? So like it's not seeking anything, it just is. Whereas I do have a undefined root center as well, but my root center has some hanging gates. And so
Mm.
so for me, it's a lot more. I feel a lot more pressure to do things, right? Like
Mm.
that root pressure than I do like thinking pressure. So, or that
Gotcha.
like that head pressure. And so like to me, like so back to what that was about was like the energy of how I show up to something and how I'm influenced by the environment is, I think, so much more fascinating
Yeah.
than just what is my profile.
Yeah, that's so true. Cause like, I think environment, I mean, I notice when I've lived in so many different states, so many different cities, traveled to a bunch of different countries and stuff, and I can tell how difference of environments, like, make me feel in transition, and it's like being able to navigate that and know like, okay, what you're more like susceptible to and what is you and what is other, I think is like a really good strong practice to actually be able to be aware of. Cause like I think that's could be it can I think that's a huge part of why people feel ungrounded when they're traveling and stuff is because like the environmental things. Is a one does do ones the one line, is that like going very deep with things? Is that okay, so that's like one.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
foundation, and I also have the well gate too. So
Oh, okay. So you're like, you know what
double
I mean?
double whammy in
This
there.
may I literally just did this. I was just talking about this analogy because I'm dating, and so I was seeing somebody for a few months, and we broke up, and what I was telling somebody, I was like, you know what? I feel, and I was equating this to animals because I'm very like spirit animal,
Mhm.
that's like the lens that I see things through more strongly now. And I was like, I feel like I'm a whale and I can go down to the depths into the ocean and go deep with somebody and dive deep into that. And like maybe he was a bird and couldn't meet me to like, and so like he needs a bird and like could just stay to be like to stay up above and surface and bopping around and flying around. And I was like, maybe I'm just the wrong animal. Like I need another whale that can go deep with me. So I get that on that like well and depth for things.
Yeah, well, and I think like the whales too, it's the experience, right? To me,
Yeah.
like that's what that really speaks to is that lived experience and that like ancient knowledge that is
Mm,
traveled through, right? And so it's and like most whales aren't these fast moving creatures. Like when you think about it, they meander in
yeah.
the, and they have like the pressure of the water and the um and it's just this ease with which they move through without feeling like they have to do anything.
Mm,
And instincts, that kind of stuff,
mhm.
when you get into a whale, there's just so much more of that that comes
Oof.
through.
Yeah.
Really resonates is that being on, and it's not that you have to be the same thing,
Yeah.
but you have to be willing to honor and respect where the other person is at and how you come together,
Right.
because
Right.
the relationship is its own thing.
Right, it's like a third entity that forms. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which is kind of nuts to think about. Even our, like, our business or, like or even, like, in this I mean, they're another human being, but, you know, I know you have a daughter, but it's like this thing that you create, you know, and it's yeah, it's its own thing, which is interesting. But, okay, so going back to your profile, so then what is a 5? What is the energy of that?
The five is the heretic. So they
Okay.
are they are a projection channel, which means they're usually seen as somebody that can fix a problem.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so the projection aspect of it is somebody will come up to you and project and have like this sense of, oh, you can fix what's wrong with me. And then it's up to the
Yeah,
discernment, okay, do I actually have the skills? And so the heretic part comes in like, if you meet their expectation of what you can fix, great. If you
yeah.
can't, then it's like you're that heretic, you're the one that's getting burned at the stake, you're like your reputation will suffer, all of that kind of
Oh.
stuff. But there's other places where they like that five line is kind of seen as the messenger, right? Like they're the ones that
Oh.
are standing at the like, and Bra's example of the five, he always uses this house analogy, like different people are different places in the house.
Ooh,
The five is that the person upstairs behind the curtain, right? So you never really see them,
okay.
but you know that they're there, right? And so
Gotcha.
um, and so I get like that part of it resonates of the as a 5-1 child, right? Like your
Yeah.
parents, like the expectations that they put on you, that's kind of always been one of my belief stories or whatever that I put upon my childhood, especially from like the teenagers. Like I never felt like I could do anything right because I would
Oh,
go on one end or go on the other end. Like there was like
ah,
because I didn't really know what the expectation was because it wasn't communicated clearly, and
yeah.
so there was this constant projection of what I should be doing. But
Right.
like I had no idea what I should be doing. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and trying to like meet an expectation that I didn't know what it was. And then I would get to the point I was like, screw it, and I would just go and be myself, and I would get in trouble for that. So because that wasn't the expectation either.
You're like, "I don't know what you want, so I'm just gonna do what I want."
So like there's all of those sorts of nuances. One of the things that I love about like the profiles is that there's so much of it that's about how your energy interacts with the world around you,
Yeah.
right? So it's not, it in and of itself isn't just this random number that you have to.
Yeah. It gave you a thumbs up. It agreed.
This like it isn't just about this number that you have to be, or like this
Yeah.
specific energy that you have to be, but it's bringing that recognition and just a different level of awareness
Yeah.
of
How you can
when
move.
I go around people, this is the first thing that people are going to connect with.
Yeah.
And especially as the five with having the one, like people sense that I have that depth of knowledge, right?
Right.
So it's
Huh.
it's been
Yeah.
really
I
interesting to.
feel like 'cause I have well, because I had shared with you, I have 2 charts. Like, I have 2 charts that I was born with and charts I now go off of when I had my huge experience and when I changed my name, and so much changed, this last year. So I've really been just almost a year now integrating all of those energies, but in both charts, it's interesting because like they communicate to each other. So like my astrology chart communicates, it like feeds into the other, like it's a
Mhm,
continued story. And so one of my really good friends, this is an astrologer, and she was like, "You can't make this shit up. Like it's literally what
mm-mm,
was missing in this chart is now what you have in this chart." And then she's like, the way these speak to each other, only really an astrologer can like really understand. But she's like, this is
mhm.
just nuts. So in my human design, I have a 2 in both. I have a 2 line in both charts. So the way that you're talking about like environment and knowing something about yourself, when I had realized like, because I think 2 is a hermit, right? That's like what they're called. I think the 2.
They are that, but they're the natural. The
Yeah.
two is the natural.
Okay. Okay. I
So
yeah.
it's always about what comes through you naturally.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's part of why you have that hermit energy, right? Like because you don't need the other
Yeah.
to know what you know.
Yeah, that I feel going back to that depth of the with the whale is like I know, and now I have more of an understanding of like knowing that I need that hermit energy where when I was younger I was like would get overstimulated, or I'd be like kind of go more towards anger or like frustrated when I was like around too many people or too many ideas or going too many places. Like I needed to literally take myself to a cafe, put my earbuds in, not talk to anybody, or like lock myself in my room. And that kind of flow in and out has like been really
Mhm.
helpful for me to navigate environments. Okay, wait. So for environments, because I know there's like a certain thing in environment with the chart too. Do you
Yes.
resonate with
So
your environment?
yeah, I'm a mountains. So yeah,
Okay.
like I'm that high, and to me, like this is where like it's really fun, right? Because like as you add the layers on top, right? So I'm a mountains person,
Yeah.
which means the higher perspective and the like doing better in higher elevations with lower oxygen levels. So like I love breath work and just how I can
Ooh.
exhale and hold my breath and all of that kind of stuff like really resonates. And I'm a Libra. So
Oh,
I'm an
okay.
air sign, right? And
Oh,
so like
wow.
again, this
So
is
like
like
the
when we start getting those little
yeah.
layers on it,
Yeah.
like that becomes even more potent. And I love too that the environments are on your design side, right? So it is how
Yeah.
your body feels safe in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And how like where and how your body like if it really needs to heal, this is what you need to do.
Mm.
Right. And
Yeah.
so and it's so funny because like I'm a mountains, my husband is a cave, and my daughter's a shore. So
You're like,
like
how do we make
as
all
we
that
talk
work?
about like what our dream so it's like we were looking at pictures of like what our dream house is gonna look like. My husband's literally got a like his like if you make a concrete little thing with his desk and he can look out maybe over water. And my daughter's like, yes, I'm gonna be in that cove over there next to the water.
My God, that's hilarious. You're like, I want to be on the top of the
I'm
mountain
gonna be on the
enjoying the
top of
air.
the I'm gonna be gonna be up on top of the mountain. You can find me there.
Oh my God, that's wild.
But the so like the environment and I like how like you can take it to recognizing because it also shows in you whether it's like a hardscape or a landscape, right? So
Yeah.
is even within the mountains, right? Like your mountain can be a hardscape or it can be a landscape,
Oh,
right? And so like the so which one of those like you would naturally thrive in?
Yeah.
You know, and so like that, if you're more of the mountains, but in the land, the hardscape, like the high rise penthouse, right? Like
Right.
that's where you're gonna thrive. Or if you have a loft and like living in a loft, or if you live in the city, then having the balcony on the roof, those sorts of things will be your little havens.
Yeah. I think my environment is a wide valleys. What do you know about that?
So yours, like in the chart that you gave me,
Yeah.
it is the valley, it
Uh-huh.
is wide, and it's landscape, right?
Okay.
So the idea of it's like the prairie, so it's the valley in
Okay.
between the mountainscapes, right? So instead
Yeah.
of like there's those narrow valleys that are going to be the little ones that navigate in between, but
Yeah.
you're the valley in between the two mountain sets.
Okay, that makes sense
So you
because
can
I
see
guess
the mountains on both
yeah,
sides of you, but they're not on top of each other. You're not closed in, right? So
yeah,
you've got the width and that breadth to the outside, right? So you feel like you can stretch your arms out,
yeah,
right? And so like that's part of but you got the support on both sides, right? So like
yeah,
that's the valley is like you're still settled and you're grounded and you're being outside in
yeah,
nature. It is like so you would be more of a nature person than
yes.
a city person. But that's what that like kind of that's the difference between like a wide valley and a narrow valley.
That makes sense because I feel like in Narrow Valley, when you're describing that, I feel really claustrophobic. Like I need to like see, and I love mountains. I
Mhm.
love nature. So my environment still like in my old chart used to be caves, which I kind of like can see that I don't need that as much as I had beforehand. Like I needed to really, and I still have that tendency where like if I go into a restaurant, like I sit with my back against the wall. I want to see everything out. Like I want to like nestle and stuff. But like now in areas that felt really nurturing for me, now like I get feel claustrophobic. Like I want to have more space. I want to like so it's interesting how things have like started to shift. But the valley part is like, yeah, I still love the mountains, but I want to be able to like see them. Like I don't want to be like stuck in them, which is interesting.
Yeah. And I think that's always like to me because like it's always meant to be an experiment, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what human design
Yeah.
is. It's an experiment. What resonates at different times.
Right.
And so like and I think too, like that's where like the recognizing the cycles that we have in there and how the cycles overlap and overlay on top of our
Yeah.
natal chart, right? And so and so for me, like like my thought experiment that wants to come through for you is like, okay,
Mhm.
so when I get sick, would I get better faster being out on a porch in the woods in fresh air and nature, or would I get better faster curled up, cozied up,
Mm.
just like nestled in bed, nurtured by myself, right? Like which
Yeah.
one of those feels more supportive to your body,
Yeah. Ooh, I like that.
right? And so like that idea of because I think like to me, regardless of so many big life transformations we can go through and how many different times we feel like we can be reborn,
Mhm.
how we are coded when we are born is something we carry through with us our entire lives,
Mm.
right? Like because it fundamental in the building blocks of who we are
Mhm.
at a cellular level. And so every bit of new cells that we create in our body, that's there that creation point for us always.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
Right.
I
So like
know.
and that's just my perspective.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't experience life differently, right?
Mhm.
Because we have the different lessons and we have this kind of stuff. But when it comes back, especially the body part, what what does the body really need to feel at home?
Right.
And so like that's just like that's my
Yeah.
and it's not like I don't like I'm not attached to what it is, but like, oh, what is it?
Right.
It's like
Well, I
that
think
kind of
that's like
curiosity.
all of these like layers or lenses that we have, which are really fun tools. Like we get to decide if it feels helpful or not, or if it
Mhm.
resonates or not. And then it could, this could resonate. And you're like, oh, that didn't really land for me. Like when I first heard about human design, I was like, oh, it doesn't super land. It was like, actually, I found it out through Gene Keys. I went deep, I
Mhm.
went Gene Keys first, like did one, I don't even know it fully. It was like one of the one of his, like, mini books about, like it was, like, love or prosperity or, like I just
So
went
they
super
so
micro. Yeah, and then I didn't know what human design actually was. It was, like, when I first started to travel a couple of years ago,
Mhm,
and then that's kinda how I stumbled into it, but I think that's what feels really nice that we can try these ons to be like, "Okay, does this lens or view feel, like, expansive for me? Does it feel helpful for
mhm.
me of understanding, or, like, is it not so resonant?" So, I feel like it's, like, one of those things where, like, okay, it's not something that you get to fit yourself into. It's like, okay, does it feel resonant with, like, your mind, body, spirit, and how does that incorporate in your life, and how can you, like, use it in your life? I think is definitely more beneficial than just being like, "This is you." It's just, like, feels more
Well, we
expansive
but
for
because
me.
we are always constantly evolving,
Right.
right? And I think that's the beauty of like how all of these different systems play with each other,
Yeah.
right? Like the layers and the depths of how you get to know yourself with gene keys, right, is different than the layers and depths with which you get to know yourself through human design or
Yeah.
astrology or I mean pick a system, right? Like they none
Yeah.
of them are bad in and of themselves, but like what you're experiencing and the life lesson that you need to have at that point in time is going to lead you towards what's going to allow that to open up for you,
Mm.
right? If you're willing,
Yeah.
right? Because that's anything in life. You've got to be willing, or sometimes the universe is going to smack you upside the head with some things, right? Like that. I think for me, like that's just a fun thing of like I think back in the fall, I was like, okay, I'm ready to like step out and do a little bit more, and like
Uh-huh.
we all got pneumonia at Thanksgiving. We all got flu at Christmas. I mean, we're all healthy now, but it was just like it was one, and it's we didn't all get it at the same time. It's like one person got it as soon as they were wrapping up, the next person got it as soon as they were wrapping up, the next person. And so from it was like from Thanksgiving
Yeah.
until like the second, like almost Valentine's Day, somebody in this house was sick.
Honestly, happened to my family too. It was from December, and so many people I've talked to have had this experience. They're like, "What the fuck for this year?" Because it was like I was sick in December. No, it was November because we were supposed to go on a road trip to visit family for Thanksgiving, and I got like the most sick I've ever gotten. I was like, "What is happening right now?" I was down for a week, and then it was like December. My mom was, or no, was it January? I think my dad got sick again. And then my mom was sick all of January. She got sick, felt better. Then my dad brought something home from work. Then he was sick. Then she got re sick. It was just such a mess. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like been one thing after another, which I feel like a lot of people have gotten hit by that and just feeling like we can't get our head above water. And it's like, okay, we're just winter, slow. It's like forced rest, forced
And
hibernation, you know?
but and in this case, it is more than just winter, right? Like
Yeah.
it is the season of change.
Yeah.
And I think that it is, this is that precipice time, right? Like there
Mm.
are so many things that are just beyond the horizon and things that are happening so fast
Mm.
that regardless of what your belief is, you can't deny that that's happening. Whether you look at the astrologies and the night sky and all of these different
Mm.
planetary changes, when you look at the human design and the background frequency and how that's changing,
Mm.
and then you're like, well, that kind of seems silly, but then the Schumann resonance is changing and
Yeah,
the earth has been shaking, I mean, like and magma has been moving and like that kind of tangible stuff that you can't ignore,
yeah,
right? And then the friction that is just in the air when most people talk to each other, even on people that have been through enlightened experiences,
yeah,
or because it is just part of that frequency shift that is happening.
yeah,
And so it doesn't have to mean I mean it does, but like that's not for me to say what it has to mean for anybody, but like it is happening regardless of whether we apply meaning to it or not.
mm,
So to allow ourselves to be in, and so like recognizing that, yes, we still live in a 3D world. Yes, we still have to figure out how we're going to pay bills and move through life.
yeah,
But also, like I personally believe, 2020 was the first round of, okay, hello, what we're doing isn't working anymore.
yeah.
And oh, you didn't want to listen then? We're going to throw this at you. What you were doing isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
It's just this, it's going to be that constant thing until everything that we know it has changed, right?
Yeah.
And by the end of our lifetime, what we see and look at around the world is going to be, I mean, as with most lifetimes, but I think in this one in particular, because of all of the changes, like we're going to look outside the world and so many different things are going to be different. And it doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't mean
Yes.
that's going to be easy, right? But it doesn't mean that it's going to be bad because I think that's one of the things of I love the people that talk about like we were born for these times. And so the I like in my chart, I actually have the left angle cross of upheaval. So much of my chart is disharmony, right? Like and like chaos and like I trigger a lot of people, but it's not that it's always a bad thing, right? Like it, but it's just my again, not having an open head and again, how everything leads with each other. I have an open head, so my ability to like throw out different ideas, get people thinking about things and then we go into the astrology sign. Like I've got a night chart, but I've got a fairly balanced as far as like different elements, right? So
Mhm.
like my sun is Libra, which is air, my moon is Earth, which is Virgo, my rising sun is Leo, which is fire. So, like there's just a lot of this kind of steadiness that I can carry, even though I bring levels of okay, we can't just stay doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so it's to me, it's really interesting to watch because as I navigate that, I don't feel well, we all have periods of time where we get thrown off and stuff like that. But in what would be seemingly super chaotic times, it's really easy for me to be a little bit more detached, but a little bit more just even keel and like, okay, let's
Mm.
just work our way through this,
Right.
right?
One step at a
And
time. Yeah.
and having that kind of thing where like and but then to watch the people around me
You're like, "Whoa,
my
actually,
God,
everything's
where am
fine."
I like little things like that
Yeah.
are so I think that's again we come to how energy moves and how we interact and how we flow because it all works together. We innately are have everything that we need within us to navigate the world around us.
Yeah.
Even as chaotic as it may be, even as uncertain as it might feel to some people, as you know hard as it might be for people to see over the horizon, having a little bit of, for me, I also have the hope as my motivation. So, like,
Mm.
those different layers of what we have as motivation all fit into what's going to propel us forward in the world
Mm.
and how we're going to make our impact, right? So, it would be, while it might seem so like things that don't always seem to go together, right? But if I'm leading all of that with hope,
Mhm.
like it balances all of that chaos where if somebody has like guilt motivation or something like that but their chart is about industry and propelling and like making things logical and step-by-step processes and stuff like that because they'll feel guilty if they don't have a process for everything,
Mm.
right? And so like you begin to see how everything layers on top of each other and that there aren't any real accidents,
Yeah.
right? Nothing in the chart is good or bad.
Right.
And like even and it was one of those things where even astrologers and Ra was when he was talking about the the different gates where he actually regrets using detriment in the gates because it's not that it is a bad thing, right? It is just a different flow of energy. It is a
Yeah.
different
Different
expression of the
experience.
energy,
Right, right.
right?
That's so true. I think, I really like the way that you're talking about that, like and I'd love to just hear more about just even in your personal transitions, because I think that I mean, collectively, we're in massive transition.
Hmm.
Even like you said, if you're not aware of the energetic transition, like you can see like just the broad spectrum transitions that are happening in the world, whether or not you look to media or you look to all these different things and you could be like, oh my God, it's so chaos and so chaotic. But we're going through transition and transitions aren't easy. Like there's a lot of things that have to come up for us to go into the next. But to dial it into, like, just your specific experience with transition, life transition, what are your favorite tools to, like, keep what you're saying, keep that groundedness? Like, if someone's feeling like, "I don't experience that in my life," what are some key things that you go back to or that helps you go through these life transitions that we all go through that feel really, and you could speak about your own personal transition that you're in now, but yeah, I would love for you to kinda talk around that.
Well, yeah, I think for me, like death is such a powerful tool, right?
Mm,
And I think finding, so for me, it's breath, but finding that one thing that you can happen in one moment. Like,
mm,
so for some people, it is putting their feet on the ground, right? For some people, it's a letting, it's dancing or letting something flow out of your body, right? Like, whatever that one thing is, it might be singing, right? Like, whatever that one thing is that in that act, it brings you right back to the present, right? Because that for me is how I get through every major transition and where I am able to not get caught in loops of worry, of anxiety,
mm,
of falling suspect to somebody else's pressure, and in that sense of a breath. Right. I can choose to release and have things pass through me. I can choose to breathe in fresh energy and fresh life force. I can choose in that breath,
mm,
in the space of that breath.
yeah,
And so for me, breath is what connects me to my own life force energy the most.
yeah. So coming back to the presence of now, because I think that's like
Yes.
the stresses of transitions or things changing. And even though like the classic change is the only constant, like we know that, like everything is not going to stay the same. We're all going to be moving through something that is changing every single day, every single moment we're different. But even then, like we still cling to what we know. And I think when in those transition periods, it can be really like you could either future forward worry about like future things that are like, well, what if that, what if this, and or you could go back to the past. So I think that's so helpful, like you're saying, is to like anchor into that present moment of like, okay, if it's a hand on the heart, if it's the deep breath, the belly breath, the feet on the ground is one of my favorite things too. And just, I think those are very practical, tangible things that you're like, okay, if you're in an overthinking loop, like, can you just put your feet on the grass or can you just,
Yeah.
you know, be like, okay,
Because it's something that connects you
yeah,
to your body, all right? Like something that connects you to your body because your body only experiences the now.
yeah,
So even if you're overthinking something or you're um, reliving something, still just tapping in the now.
yeah,
And so, whatever really gets you present to your body and allows, because the other part of that is what do you need to do to calm your nervous system down? And how do we know that that works the best through your breath and
mm-hmm,
through dispersing energy on the ground? That's
mm-hmm,
why those are the two most popular ways to do it, right? The hand on the heart and the hand on the womb and the connecting to your intuition and those parts of you are great, but that's not the same as getting present in the moment.
mm-hmm,
Because when you're doing that, you're still looking to connect to something, right? Because your hands are energy.
mm-hmm,
And so when you're putting your hand in here, you're circulating this energy within yourself, but it's still a movement point in a different way.
kind of looping within, yeah,
Whereas when you're putting your feet on the ground, you're dispersing the excess, right?
right,
And it's a connection point, right? Which I think is really crucial. And the same thing that happens with the breath, right? Is like there is this pause when you
mm-hmm,
breathe. As you exhale and release, your body has a physical reaction to that release. It is a just a natural thing. And so the level with which we need to release something is that level with which we exhale. It might just be a simple like, or it may be like a right? Like
right,
the
right,
what like it might be a
a
deeper
relief,
sound or something like that. It's
yeah,
like, but what is proper in that moment? And that because then you recognize when you're holding your breath, right? There's so many little things like that, like because you remind yourself to breathe, and that brings
yeah,
that like because when you're consciously choosing to breathe, that is a presence in the now.
yeah,
Because your body knows how to breathe,
right,
your body will do it without you thinking about it. But if you are thinking about breathing, then you are in the present moment with what's happening with your body. That's one of the reasons why I love the breath
I
so
like that
much.
description. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And
wonderful.
recognizing like the different like again, same sort of thing is like what phase of moving through that are you? So once you get present, that's when getting connected to yourself makes sense, right?
Mm,
Or getting connected to the earth or getting connected to your partner or getting connected to, and tangibly touching something. I'm a crystal lady, so like having like that that crystal and that extra vibration
uh-huh.
um to help shift. Sometimes it's like it depends on what you need. Like, do you need to settle? Do you need to feel a little bit more expansive? Like, what do you need? And that's where
Mm.
like learning to tap into and finding your own self-authority. And I think that is going to be really beautiful to watch. As
I think it's your hand movements.
I think it
It's
is,
like
but it's just
it's
hilarious.
like, yes, we like that. Wait, what
Uh,
crystal do you have with you right now?
this is a
I don't know the name for that one.
I don't know. It's like a celestial quartz or something like that.
Quartz, yeah.
I think it starts ethereal quartz or something like that.
Mm,
But it's got like rainbow speckles in it and stuff like that.
it's gorgeous.
Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, we can talk about that off screen. I'm a crystal person.
Same. I am. I'm scattered throughout. Yeah, scattered everywhere. Like any room I want to go into, I can pick up a crystal. Yeah, but for your okay, so transition, I love those tangible things that we can do through life transition. I think that's a very practical, easy, quick way to get tap into our body to figure out, okay, let's move the energy of what we're moving through if we're worried about external world and external transitions or if it's personal transitions. And I think those are all things that can get connected to the present moment and then be able to be like, okay, no, what else do we need to process? Do we have to, do X, Y, and Z or whatnot, or just get, used to this transition, I think are really helpful things to do. But I want to kind of talk about your art behind you and like how if you're listening to this, she has two paintings behind her. And I got a little impromptu tour of her room where she's got so much art and stuff supplies. So I love to like, yeah, what is your expression? How does that start for you? What's your art? How does art come in and out of your life? And is that also helping you in transitions?
It does. It is a way for me to keep creative energy flowing, right?
Mm,
And because I do that without thinking, right? Like it's not this like I don't sit down with I have an idea of what I'm gonna do. Like I put music on, I let the beat, not with any words or anything like that. I just put some sort of it's got rhythm and it's like I just let the beat and the rhythm flow through. Right,
mm,
like then I let that choose the color and then whatever decides to wants to come out. So for me, it isn't about what I'm creating. It isn't about anything other than keeping that channel open,
mm,
right? And what I did find, is the more that I did that, like, the more I was able to just not like not be so reactive is just another way that my
yeah,
nervous system calmed down.
yeah.
And then like I kind of went from making that kind of art to doing as part of my like morning meditation practice with journaling stuff for a year. I've kind of moved on to a different phase, but for like a year I had a blank piece of paper and instead of doing just traditional journaling, like I
Mhm,
had my colors out and I would allow the combination of words and pictures or colors create something on the page.
mm,
Right. And so instead of getting caught up in that, I have to journal something to come up with something, right? Like, or I have
yeah.
like, or it just has to like this line after line of like filling a line, filling a line, filling a
Yeah.
line, like what if I've got a blank page, so like that
Yeah.
idea of like if you have a blank page and you're creating something,
Mm,
right? And so just for me, it's keeping that creation energy and tapping into the feminine side a little bit more in ways that allow me to feel a bit more freedom
mhm,
in within myself, right? Because I think one of those challenges that we can face is that how we desire to be in our creative and feminine expression is often very different than that of our parents.
mm,
Sometimes it's the same, but quite often um, it is a very different expression. You know, when we are learning or and relearning what that looks like through different phases of our life, allowing that channel to flow through however it wants gives us a sense of freedom to not have to be something specific.
Mm.
Right. And so it is, and that's one of the things that I love is when you can take something seemingly innocent or seemingly obscure, like having a blank piece of paper and creating something, but seeing where, when you practice something like that, how that then begins to create and allow you to create other things in your life.
Mm.
Right. So when we are stuck in certain areas, whether you feel like you're stuck creating something, whether you feel like you're stuck in like in patterns for food, right? Like but when you're doing something that is something you've never done before, like I'm still working on meal planning. That is my Achilles heel, right? And
Real
so
fast.
like it is my Achilles heel. But like I've got the Virgo moon, and so like by
Yeah.
like there's this whole part of me like I want to meal plan.
I want to do it, but
Like it would feel so nurturing to be able to have a meal plan and not think about what I'm gonna eat. But like because it wasn't something that I learned growing up, it wasn't
Yeah.
something that I was taught. Finding ways, sitting down with a blank piece of paper to create a meal plan feels like
Yeah.
excruciating.
Right.
But when I find other tools that allow me to start to create something, then I can then begin to say, okay, well, let me just start with the day. Let me just start with this,
Yeah.
and taking different practices from one aspect of life into another one. That's just an example. It
Mm.
can be pretty much anything, but finding ways with which it feels safe to the nervous system to practice
Mhm.
so that when you take it into some place that is not as calm to the nervous system, the idea is already second nature. You know how to do it. So you're not freaking out and getting overwhelmed about how to do it. And you can learn to then, what do I need to do to feel in my body more comfortable in the environment,
Mm.
right? So like you're not trying to navigate all of the different unknowns at once.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, I love that you brought this up because I literally started doing this because I journaled a bunch, super helpful for me in the morning, and then I transitioned to more my creative expression when I was growing up was sewing. So like I had 4 sewing machines, I like made a bunch of stuff like backpacks and prom dresses and I just fabric is like very natural to me to work with, but I've had things in storage for years. I hadn't been able to really like utilize that expression cuz you need a lot of space for that stuff like and so I just haven't had that in my lifestyle the past like several years. And so
Mhm.
I was like, okay, how do I get back into my own creativity outside of needing all of these supplies? And so when I was traveling last year, I picked up a couple of coloring books because when it's a blank page for me initially, because I didn't practice that muscle of like, okay, you could do whatever on this blank page. And I literally, if you would tell me that, I would freeze and not know what to do. Like nothing in my head is like, what? And so I was like, okay, well, I'll do coloring and start there. And so I did that for a while. And then now I literally last week just started with the blank page in the morning.
Nice.
And I like to work off something because again, it's like I freeze when it's like nothing's in my head, nothing's coming. But I like read a passage, I picked a word, and I was like, all right, we're just gonna whatever comes to mind of this word, and it was like divine tapestry, and I was like, we're just gonna express that of how we see that
Mhm.
expressed. And so then I was able to flow through a bunch of then everything came flooding in from that. And so I've just been starting to experiment with that, which feels really, it's very like activating in the morning in a very different way than
Mhm.
like putting words to the paper. So I love that you had said that because I'm like, oh my god, it's just like confirmation of like, okay, cool, it is something that feels like, yeah, you're and I notice this in my body and in my energy of like the more restless I'd feel or anxious or unsettled energy or just having a lot of energy and not channeling it out to anything, then it would be build up and I'd be like, "Ugh," and so then once I realized like if I was using my voice or recording or writing something or like any kind of output, I was like, whoa, I feel way like relaxed and like feels really good because the energy is being released and expressed kind of
Mhm.
like from when we were talking at the beginning. So I had noticed the difference of that when I now I notice those I notice those feelings in my body, and then I'll think, okay, how much time did we actually create this week or these last few days? And then usually it's like, we probably consumed more than what we created, and this is probably why you're feeling this. So I think that being able to access that exercise is gonna, like, I don't know. It's just, I'm excited to see where it goes from there with myself with the
Well,
brain
and I
page.
think too,
So
like, there's nothing wrong with having inspiration to start, right?
right.
Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But where you get to, and I get to, I'm going to invite you to, especially because I'm looking at your chart, invite you to um, play with is if I connect into my heart, what wants to flow through?
Mm,
Because you use the words, if I look at a page and I think about, I don't like, I don't know where to start, right?
yeah.
Like that's the head
The
talking,
brain. Yeah. Right. Right.
right? And the your the chart that you sent me, in that case, you're a manifester, but you've got the defined heart. You
Mm,
both your D center and your will center is defined, right? So, like that's full heart led expression.
yeah.
But you also, in that chart, you're a split definition. So you do not have a connection from your brain down to your throat, which is the expression part. So it's going to come through your heart and out.
Mm, okay.
So
Makes sense.
and so like I think even if you looked back on this short period of time that you've done it, the words and the things that have been inspiring are the things that touch your heart.
Which was the divine tapestry. Cause I was like, oh, that's exact. Wow. Oh, that I like that. That just opened up something for me. Thank you. That's going to feel really good. I'm going to connect to that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
So
it is those little things. Like it is such
yeah,
those little things.
just like
And
pop it open.
yeah, and that one of those things too where we get to also remember that we're human.
Hmm.
And while we may ultimately know what is best for us, quite
Mm,
often we're too close to things to recognize everything in
yeah.
ourselves and to have that perspective, right? Like
Yeah.
it sometimes we do need that little, and that's again part of being human. And there is no person on this earth that isn't meant to have some sort of interaction with the other to spark something.
Right, right. Which is why, like, interactions and conversations and all this is just, we're reflecting to each other, which is like, sometimes it's really difficult to see yourself in those areas that are blind, in your blind spots. And then you're like, whoa, I didn't know that was like magical about me, or I didn't know you saw that in me, or like, I didn't know I was good at that, until sometimes you have those reflections of others, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And then you're like, "Oh, duh, I thought everybody did that." And they're like and then usually it's like, no, like, that's
We're blind to our own magic most
yeah.
of the time.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. But, oh my gosh. How has it been with having your daughter, knowing all this information and being able to help her navigate through, like, her human design chart? Or does any of this come up when you're, like, parenting? Or how does your husband, like, how do you guys kind of weave that in, or do you not?
I do a lot
Okay.
because my daughter is a 3-5 emotional projector. Her only defined channel is the 3955, which I think is like, and it's one of the emotional waves, right?
Yeah,
Like she is fully an emotional child. And at
yeah.
10, she can articulate her emotions way better than I can.
Whoa.
And I'm
Okay.
like in my 40s,
That's
right?
a
Like
great skill.
because they're her emotions,
Yeah.
right? And so she, even at 10, she can sorry, I'm just gonna I could try to keep my hands down.
Yeah.
She can articulate that, like, or and my husband will say, "Well, you feel this way." She's like, "No, I don't. I'm angry." Or, "No, I don't. I'm this." "No, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm this." Like she knows what she feels.
Yeah.
And so I really try to nurture that and knowing that she is a projector, right? Like
Mm,
that I've seen the little Energizer bunny in her, like when she's
mm,
with her friends and stuff like that. And then they leave and she
mm.
and or like she'll want to stay the night at friend's house because they're all having fun, but like they start to wind down and like we had to go pick her up because she just crashes, right? Like she
Whoa.
needs that nurturing. And so like really supporting her and like creating the boundaries around that for her, making sure that she's got like her own room and her own space, like, and that there isn't as much pressure with everything
Yeah.
because I'm also very much a person that believes like we've got different phases in our lives with which we're meant to learn things. And one of my issues with the current education system is I really do believe they try to push kids to do too much too fast.
Mm,
And so, as long as she's passing it, she's showing up and she's learning. I don't stress about getting perfect grades or anything like that.
Mm.
Um, Especially because she was in first grade when she was in kindergarten, but when the pandemic first hit, but it was really first grade year that she was home with all of that. And like she got such anxiety over like having to take a test and so much that was so unnecessary at first grade, right? Like,
Mm. You're like, "What are we doing?" Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so like for that, like I bring so much of that in, and
Yeah.
the her being a projector with her friends and stuff like that, like recognizing like you may not have a lot of friends, but you've got some really good ones, and that it's so much, and just really nurturing in her. It's just so much better to be yourself and have friends that appreciate that than trying to be something you're not, because it's not something that she knows how to do, right?
Mm.
Like I mean, she can kind of blend in, but she's also that like she's got that undefined throat, so she's loud and she comes in full force of all this energy, right?
Yeah.
Like and that's her, right? And to there's a lot of people that just don't know how to handle that, especially kids,
Yeah.
and so, just being there as a place where she can talk about it and express it without trying to fix everything, right? Like,
Mm.
and then so we navigate that with my husband, who is also a 5-1 manifesting generator. But he's got the 3420. So he's got the pure manifesting generator channel, but it's all unconscious. And so, like, this pressure and this constant, like, pull of energy when you're around him to do something.
Mm.
Right. And so like, the I ended up becoming more of that navigator between the two of them. But being able to recognize that, and has just enough awareness of human design and can appreciate it. Well, like I'm like this, I was like, oh, that sounds like me. Like, so a lot of things like that
Yeah.
he understands and recognizes, but it's still really hard to let your brain catch up to the fact of like, you know, she's emotional. We're
Mhm.
not. Like we both have undefined splenic center or solar plexus centers, right? And so we don't have the same emotional responses that she does, and so because of his upbringing and his because he doesn't regulate the same way that I do,
Mm.
that he's much more explosive and reactive around her when she
Mm.
gets emotional, right? And so like then it's where I can be there around her and we can disperse things out, and
Yeah.
and I've really worked on getting her to express like, what do you need right now? Instead of
Mm.
telling her, I ask her, what do you need? Like if she goes and lays down for bed, she can't fall asleep. I'm like, we're not in a hurry, like, just lay down. Or like, what do you need? What do you need to feel more comfortable? Like, so just navigating all of that kind of stuff. I think it's been the most useful at this stage, right?
Yeah. Right. That makes sense. Wow. That would be, yeah, it's just like another way we get to know each other and
Mhm.
have that, and like how cool for you to be able to navigate that for her, like as mom, like being
Mhm.
able to hold that space and know that that's how she's experiencing things, especially since you don't have that like same emotional reaction, where like I think if you didn't have that lens, it would probably feel very confusing of like trying to understand like what she's, feeling and such. So that's a really cool way to be able to incorporate that into like relationships, and being able to say, okay, this is like another layer of who they are, and this is how I can kind of work with both of our energies within this, dynamic, which is really cool. But yeah, I think that's awesome. Well, this has been a really fun chat, and I don't
Yeah.
want to we're already touched on our hour mark. That went by so fast. We went so many ways with human design. It's just, and I just appreciate you sharing your experiences and yeah, with us, because I think we've learned so much from this chat. I'm excited with my blank page connecting more to my heart, which is going to be really exciting practice for me to incorporate. So I super appreciate that one.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for having me. It's been
yeah,
fun.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for coming again for our
No, like I
recording.
told you, this is the fun thing. This part of like this is fun.
Yeah, this is the fun part. And now when we stop recording, I'm gonna be like, okay, did we capture it? But yeah, so I'll put your links down in the show notes for people to connect to you and to find you on Instagram and your website, and to connect and follow along for your journey. So I appreciate you and thank you for being here.
Thank you.